Hey folks, this is Warwolf howling out at you. Yeah, I know, it's been a while. But as I've mentioned before, I'm not thrilled with YouTube's whole thing about blocking ad blockers, or trying to at any rate, and I do recommend that you write into YouTube, tell them you do not approve of this. For the people who actually don't mind ads, hey, that's fine. For those of us who are not willing to risk our computer safety because all it takes is one ad with like malicious code in it to potentially screw up our machines. But the reason I'm doing this video is because I've kind of realized there's a problem with Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss. Now, for those of you who may not know, I'm actually lucky enough to be in the server for um, what the hell is it? Erica Lindbeck's server. And somebody brought up something a couple of days ago. I had only just gotten back onto Discord for the first time in a couple of days. Actually, almost 2 weeks. And they mentioned that they think that there needs to be more straight representation in both Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss. Personally, I tend to agree because the representation we've got now is severely lacking. Now, does that mean I think that there's anything wrong with the other members of the cast, none of whom are straight? No, absolutely not. As far as I'm concerned, I'm perfectly fine with the characters we have and with the sexualities that they have. This does, however, bring up, again, my whole point of, do we have any good straight representation in either show, which is the main thrust of this video. And I'm just going to say it right now, I don't believe we do. As I mentioned, somebody had brought up the idea that we need to see more straight representation in both shows. I fully agree with that. We definitely could use more straight characters in the cast of both shows. We could also use some good straight representation in both of those shows. Now, you might be asking yourself, why do I say we need good straight representation? After all, don't we have straight representation in the shows? Yes, we have straight representation. Do we have good straight representation? That's a whole other matter. So, who are the straight representatives in the cast of each show? Nifty for Hazbin Hotel, possibly Lucifer, but he's not part of the main cast. He's an occasional guest star. Over on Helluva Boss, we have Millie and maybe Vortex. In the same conversation that I had when I agreed with the idea that we could use more straight rep in both shows, somebody mentioned that Vortex is supposed to be straight, according to the most recent Shark Robot sale, which this I think is the second time in as many months that I've actually not bothered to order anything because I wasn't thrilled with the designs for what they had. But they said apparently in the new sale, they apparently confirmed Vortex is straight. Okay. Problem is, he's in the same situation as Lucifer. He's not a main cast member. He's not even, a regular recurring cast member. He shows up once in a blue moon. Not literally a blue moon, but you get the idea. Every other straight character that we've seen so far has been a villain. For example, you have Adam and possibly Loot, who are from, of course, Heaven. And as far as I know, I think Adam is confirmed straight. Loot is either straight or bisexual, as far as I can tell, because it does seem that she did have feelings stronger than just apparent friendship for Adam, at least if you go by the scene with Adam's death in the show. And before I forget, in the pilot at the very least, we do have Katie Killjoy, but she comes off as every single bigoted stereotype when it comes to straight people in regards to anybody who isn't straight. She's not really a villain so much as she's kind of not even an antagonist, but just kind of a character who's more negative in their behavior towards Charlie without being a straight up villain. But between her, Crimson, Adam, Lute, presumably the majority of the other exorcists, because we don't have proof on them one way or another yet, and most of Crimson's henchmen, with, I think, the exception of Chaz, whatever the hell his last name is, I don't remember. The shark guy that Moxie dated for a while. And apparently Millie dated for a while. Yeah, every major villain so far, I think, has been straight. I'm pretty sure the agents of Dorks were all straight. Can't prove it, but I mean, at this point, I've yet to see any indications of that otherwise. Aside from Chaz, who, as far as I can tell, is bisexual, Crimson and everybody under his employ is probably straight. Crimson definitely is, as we know that he was married to Moxie's mother and, again, acts like a pretty stereotypical asshole when it comes to, sexualities other than being straight. And this is definitely not a good kind of representation for straight people. This is the way, as much as I hate to say it, because I have to say it because it's true, this is the way that a lot of gay and bisexual and even trans people were treated in most films for the last 40, 50, even 60 years, when they even acknowledged that gay and bi and trans people existed at all. I mean, sure, if you do it right, a story can absolutely have a gay or bi or trans villain, but very rarely is it done in a way that doesn't just make you go, really? I mean, I think the only really halfway decent one I can think of was the first Ace Ventura film. So, I mean, there you go. But either way, the problem with Millie and Nifty, when it comes to them being straight representation, is that they're motor hobos. They are literally murder hobos. Nifty is arguably worse in this situation because literally just about everybody just kind of like, I don't want to be near her except in absolutely necessary circumstances. I mean, you see this with everybody. I think Alistair's the only one who really is willing to put up with her outside of certain circumstances. I mean, Husk even makes the comment, like, you don't even want to know what her problems are when he brings up a lot of the character's insecurities that they've kind of unloaded on him due to the fact that he is, he's the bartender for the hotel. Nifty is so over the top and basically being obsessed with men, and specifically quote-unquote bad boys in particular, that she really comes off as a negative stereotype, not just of straight people, but even of some women. Now, I get it, that's the joke. She's a joke character who ended up being something of a lethal joke character because she got to be the one who killed Adam. I get that. The problem is that doesn't make her any better as straight representation. It really doesn't. Millie is marginally better in this regard, but she's still not good straight rep. And that's because, again, she's a murder hobo. She's got a great relationship with Mox, who is, again, perfectly, interesting as a character in and of himself. But they had no real character beats for her other than Moxie's wife and a murder hobo. They tried to give her some kind of depth of character in Unhappy Campers, which I hate to say this, but it is, in my mind, the single worst episode of the series, because they tried to give her this whole, I've been insecure all my life because I didn't get enough attention from my family, or I'm sorry, none of that made any sense, because if you look at Harvest Moon Festival, we don't see any indication of that. We see her having a very healthy and happy relationship with the few members of her family that she interacts with. We've never seen her really directly interact with her brothers. We don't know what her relationship is with her brothers. Sally Mae, her sister, is literally the only person other than her parents that we have seen interact with her. And the only negative time we see any comments from, I believe their names are Joe and Lynn. That might be fan speculation. I don't know. I think that, I don't know. I think they're officially known as Joe and Lynn, but either way. The only time they seem to say anything negative to Millie is literally just to scold her for letting Stryker get the drop on her when she was raging out. I mean, to be fair, this ties again into her murder hobo aspect. This was her being extremely protective of Moxie, but at the same time, she did let her murderous tendencies overtake her head. We know she can be a skilled fighter. We know she is a skilled fighter. But she completely lost it when trying to protect Moxie from Stryker, and Stryker was able to use that against her. But that's the only negative we ever see in terms of an interaction between her and her family. So the whole being insecure and everything, I'm sorry, as far as I can tell, Millie is quite possibly the second born of the family. If you look at the episode, or I should say the short, Hell's Bells, it seems to indicate that the brothers are younger. By exactly how much, I'm not sure. Now, if you weren't aware, Sally Mae is trans, and I didn't even notice until like the third or fourth time I watched the episode. Then I noticed the horns, which is the only real giveaway you'll get with that. I'm like, oh, cool, neat. Moved on. I don't know if Sally is straight or not. She could be lesbian, she could be bi. To my knowledge, I don't know if it's been brought up. If it has, it's probably in one of the big Pride merchandise things they've done. I never really worried about it because I honestly, up until recent years where they really made this big push to make sexuality and one's gender identity, the most significant thing about a person, I never really cared. But they have been doing this more and more often to the point that it's become off-putting. Which is why I loved Sally Mae. Because they didn't throw it in our faces that she was trans. In fact, I don't think it even came up that she was trans until after the episode had dropped and we were introduced to the fact that not only was she trans, which you would know if you were paying attention to the horns, you probably would have picked it up. Like I said, I didn't pick it up until the third or fourth watch through. But not only is she trans in the show, she's played by, somebody's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong about the name in the comments, Morgana Ignis, I think it is. I'm going to double check that right now, but I believe that is her name. In any case, Morgana, I actually had a chance to talk to her at Comic-Con. Now, for me, that's New York Comic-Con because I live in New York State, and for me, that's the only Comic-Con that matters. I'm probably never going to get to go to San Diego Comic-Con, and considering how insane things have gotten in California over the years, I'm not sure I ever want to, because that place really needs to very literally clean up its act. So, anyway, I got a chance to talk to Morgana. Yes, it is Morgana Agnes. So I got the chance to talk to her at Comic-Con, I think it was just this past year. And I even mentioned to her, I loved the way they introduced Sally. They didn't make a big deal out of the fact that she was trans. They just let her be in the show, and they let you discover it for yourself, assuming you even paid enough attention to even realize the horn patterns were what were the signifier that she had been born male and transitioned. There's another character in, oh God, it's season 1, episode 8, Queen Bee, who's female to male trans. And I don't even know if we ever got a name for this guy. But again, the horns are what gives it away if you know what to look for. And again, I didn't even notice until like the third, I think maybe fourth watch through of that episode as well, because again, I really wasn't paying that much attention. And I think there might be one other one in that episode, but doesn't have any lines, and I forget if it's trans male or trans female. Again, somebody will have to let me know about that one in the comments. But again, we only know so far of 2 straight characters. Nifty and Millie, in terms of those who were part of the normal cast of the shows. And I hate to say this, but they're not good straight rep, because again, the one thing we get out of Millie is she's Mox's wife and she's murder happy. Nifty, again, is arguably worse because we know basically 2 things about Nifty. She's a complete lunatic that nobody really wants to spend any time with unless they absolutely have to. And her obsession with men is so off-putting that any sensible man of any orientation is going to stay as far away from her as possible. And all the other straight characters we've seen in the show, again, aside from potentially Vortex and Lucifer, neither of whom are really part of the main cast, have all been antagonists or else straight up villains. Now, that doesn't mean every antagonist or villain in the shows have been straight, but I mean, at this point, there's more straight bad guys than there are straight heroes. Now, to be fair, I get it. They're in hell. And this, I have to admit, is kind of what makes it a little odd that we don't have at least a few more straight people in each cast, because, and again, much as I hate to say this, I have to say it because it's legitimately the truth, straight people are roughly like 99.9999999.5% of the world's population. So again, 98 to 99% of all the world's crimes, sins, whatever you want to label this, 99% of the wrongdoing in the world is typically done by straight people. You would think we would see more of them, even if they've tried to reform or change their ways, or are no longer potentially doing bad things once they get to hell. I mean, you'd think we'd see more of them in the cast, even if they're just there for like 1 or 2 episodes. At least show us some more positive straight rep. We don't get a lot of it in that show, either show really. The other problem that we have, and this is the other one. This is the other main reason why I wanted to make this video. Hazbin Hotel literally has established Charlie as being bisexual, much like Moxie is over in Helluva Boss. And I really, really don't like what I think is going to happen when and if we get to see Charlie's ex-boyfriend. We know that she was supposedly dating a boy at some point prior to the events of the series named, if I'm wrong about this, somebody correct me in the comments, please, Seviathan von Eldritch. We do see pictures, or at least one picture anyway, of Charlie and Seviathan together in the pilot of Hazbin Hotel. She's shown in a picture with him in the pilot. I think we see another one in Lucifer's Castle in the episode Dad Beat Dad. And again, if he shows up, I know exactly what is likely to happen. And this is, again, why I think we need better straight representation in both shows, because I fully expect this to be where they're going to go. If Seviathan shows up, whether it be in flashback or, even him showing up in the present day, they're going to depict him as this god-awful boyfriend who was a complete and utter dick to Charlie, and that is why they broke up. They're going to do this to try to say that this is why she's with Vaggie. They're going to try to, quote-unquote, justify that relationship. They do not need to justify the relationship. Vaggie and Charlie have been a couple since before the series started. And anybody who watched the pilot, unless they are completely brain dead or just have no emotional intelligence, would have picked up that they were dating. You didn't even need to have that spelled out. Now, what surprised me was to find out that Charlie was bi. This legitimately threw me for a complete loop. Completely, totally, and utterly. Because if you had just told me Charlie's a lesbian, I would have believed it. Because she was dating Vaggie. And again, you didn't need any kind of explanation for that. It was blatantly obvious. It was blatantly obvious that they were very much in a relationship. The way they behaved was not the way friends behave with each other. Unless they are so close that they might as well be family, and I did not get that vibe off of them. You could tell these two were dating. So to find out that Charlie was bi, okay, that's a surprise. At first, I thought the guy in the pictures in the pilot with Charlie, other than Lucifer, it was very easy to pick out Lucifer. When I saw the pictures of what we now know to be Seviathan, I thought that was her cousin or something. As weird as that sounds, I honestly thought they were family just because I could not imagine her willingly dancing with a guy if she was dating Vaggie, if indeed she was a lesbian. So it turns out, no, Charlie's bi. And again, I know what they're going to do. They're going to have, if they have him show up at all, in flashback, he's going to be this conceited, arrogant prick who thinks his money makes him better than anybody or everybody else, or they're going to do something else and just depict him as a completely negative person. Somebody so bad that Charlie, who's practically a saint, had to break up with him. I fully see this coming. His sister, and again, somebody's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I'm not sure if her name is Helga or Helsa. It's one of the two. And again, I'm fully of the belief I know where they're going with this. They're going to depict her as the stereotypical queen bitch, mean girl of the high school, and that she was going to be constantly, putting Charlie down and God knows what else. I fully see that for both of these characters. Helga or Helsa or whatever the hell her name is, again, she's going to be your stereotypical rich bitch. And she might be straight, which means she's going to be another negative depiction of a straight person. Leviathan. Again, I fully see him having behaved like a complete dick, a complete and utter, ass on such a colossal level that Charlie had to break up with him because she couldn't deal with him, because he's going to be a classic toxic male. You couldn't see me doing the air quotes, but I was doing the air quotes. I fully see this happening. And if, God forbid, they decide to have him show up in the show's present day, he's either going to continue being a jerk, or worse, they're going to make him a jerk and a simp who's trying to get Charlie back and is constantly going to be, ragging on Vaggie, and just in general being a stereotypical homophobe. Again, this is so easy to predict, and I really hope to God that they don't do this. But unfortunately, this has become such a trope of the asshole who is so bad that the person they're dating ends up dating either somebody of the opposite sex or just swears off relationships altogether. I think the one exception to that might be Marge Simpson, when we found out that she had once dated a guy called Artie Ziff, who was such a colossal dick that she realized she was better off with Homer, who is hardly the most intelligent person alive. Let's be honest, Homer's an idiot. Even from the first season, he was pretty much dumb as a rock. I think rocks might have a higher IQ. But I do think this is what they're going to do if we ever see Leviathan and Helga/Helsa. I really think that's what we're going to see. I pray to God that that's not what they do. I would love to see them break that stereotype. Now, I get it. That stereotype exists for a reason. The stereotype exists because this has happened. To be fair, I will give them credit that they did this in reverse with Chaz. Him being such a colossal asshole that he ended up, eventually meeting and marrying Millie, and I'm referring to Moxie here. He was such a colossal, jackass. He basically left Moxie to get, arrested, and he eventually ended up with Millie. But again, this is that stereotype at play. Granted, it's a bisexual man in a relationship with another bisexual man, and he was treated so badly at the end that he ends up with Millie. They're trying to justify him being with Millie. You don't need to justify it. He's bisexual. He's interested in both men and women. All right? It's not something you need to justify. It's the same thing with Charlie. She's into both men and women. She just happens to be in a serious relationship now with a woman. If they basically decided to have Vaggie and Charlie break up, which I don't think they're ever going to do, and quite frankly, I have a hard time believing there would be a reason to do it anyway, just because these two are really good together. But let's say they did it. They would either have her start dating another woman, because apparently, being a bisexual woman means you're only into women. I don't know where they get the idea that bisexual means you're just going to date another woman. But, okay, whatever. But if she were to date a man, people would go, how dare you? That's, that's like homophobic. It's like, that's a heterosexual relationship you're now promoting. It's like, no, you're promoting a bisexual woman dating either a bi or heterosexual man. And, at this point, we've already seen that in reverse anyway. We've literally seen two bisexual men dating, Moxie and Chaz. Chaz turned out to be an ass, And he eventually ended up with Millie. We don't know exactly where the attraction began for them. Maybe it was an instant thing. Maybe it was something that developed over time. But we do know that they were ultimately, in love enough that they got married. But again, that's still that stereotype. Somebody who is so bad that it drives them to date the opposite sex. And I think that whether or not they intend to do this, if they bring in Leviathan and they basically have him either be a complete and colossal dick, or they just have him be an utter simp, it's going to be a negative stereotype. They're going to have him be, and again, if they do this, the odds are he's going to be straight, and he's going to be such a negative depiction of straight people that they're going to use it to justify Charlie and Vaggie being together. They're going to do the same thing with Helga / Helsa, whatever they're going to call her, whatever her name is. I can see them doing this because that trope is such a ubiquitous thing at this point. We saw this as far back as Seinfeld. George Costanza had dated this one woman who I think was bisexual, even if she didn't know it. She dated George, couldn't stand him after a while, and started dating a woman. Randomly encounters Kramer, and eventually starts dating him, at least for a while. Whether or not she continued dating men after Kramer, I don't know. But, again, this trope has become pretty calcified over the years. We've seen this a lot, in media, where, the one partner is so bad that the other individual in the relationship ends up dating somebody of the opposite sex. Again, I think Artie Ziff might be the lone exception in that he was such a colossal asshole that Marge realized she was better off with Homer. And again, Homer might be so dumb that rocks have a higher IQ. This is why I say we need more positive heterosexual representation in the show. Because both shows, really. Because in Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, we have murder hobos who really have no other note other than they're straight. They tried to give Millie some depth. It didn't work. And it arguably created the single worst episode of Helluva Boss. Seriously. This was the one episode I can say so far I out and out despised was Unhappy Campers. Because they tried to introduce this new aspect of Millie's characterization that we've never seen at any point prior to the episode. In the series so far, she is probably the least damaged out of the Helluva Boss cast. I mean, Blitz was basically traumatized almost from the word go because his father was a complete and colossal dick. I'm just going to say it, the man was straight up abusive. Then again, so was Stolas' dad. Stolas' dad at least had the excuse of being royalty and being so detached from family that I don't think this guy should have had kids, period. As for Cash Buxo, yes, that is his name, by the way. Blitz's last name is Buxo. Blitz, if you look at the first episode of the second season, you can tell this is an individual who was basically emotionally and possibly, for all we know, physically abused, emotionally at the very least, by his father. And then he's traumatized by the fact that he's literally responsible for the accident that killed his mother. it has estranged him from his twin, and I think his twin is bisexual as well. I mean, because we know Blitz is definitely bisexual. He's dated men and women both. It's very possible. I think they said that Barbie Wire is also into both men and women, so she's also bisexual. Yes. Before anybody says it, I know that some people have said that they are pansexual. Again, I don't believe in the concept of hundreds of genders. There's male, there's female, which matches to biological sex, or your transition between the two genders. And again, I know there are people who call themselves non-binary. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that as a concept, because physiologically you are literally one or the other regardless of how you feel. But yeah, either way, we know that Blitz at the very least has dated men and women. In fact, we see that from the episode Apology Tour, where he's dated or at least slept with multiple people. So yeah, as far as Barbie Wire is concerned, I'm not sure. I think they said she's in the same boat as Blitz when it comes to sexuality. Either way. But again, Blitz is a bag of traumas, okay? Moxie is really no better. I mean, he grew up in a household where his father was extremely abusive, not just to him, but to his mother. They've never confirmed it, but they seem to indicate that either Crimson killed Moxie's mother, or he may have tricked Moxie into doing it. So, yeah, either way, his father, Moxie's father, was just as domineering and in many ways excessively worse by comparison to Cash. So, yeah, he's not exactly the most healthy when it comes to that situation either. He's got his own traumas. Luna, we know next to nothing about when it comes to her backstory. We know that she was adopted by Blitz when she was like 17. I think she was only a couple of months, maybe even as much as a month to a month and a half or so out from aging out of the system. She would have been out on the streets. Blitz actually did her a significant favor, even if she rarely was willing to acknowledge it, at the very least in the first season and a half. Blitz gave her a home, but it's very clear she was not in a good place when he adopted her. And they kind of hinted in the first season, episode 8 of the first season, as a matter of fact, she might have been adopted before and returned, which might explain why she's always been very guarded when it comes to familial affection, especially from Blitz, because she's probably been used to that before, and she doesn't believe that Blitz legitimately wants her as his daughter. In fact, that becomes almost a plot point in season 2, episode 2, Seeing Stars. I mean, she's talking about, she tells him, if I'm doing such a bad job, why don't you replace me? Now, I think in her mind, she's talking about doing such a bad job as being his daughter, when his issue is her work as a receptionist. And he's looking at it from a completely different mindset. He's looking at it from the mindset of, she's challenging me to replace her in terms of, staff. He's not thinking about replacing her in his life at all as his daughter. That's never, I think, once crossed his mind. But again, Luna has her own traumas, and Luna is bisexual. according to what I've been led to understand. So, again, at this point, she's been depicted as primarily interested in men, but okay, if we're going by the Pride Month stuff being official, which a lot of people seem to do, then okay, she's bisexual. She just leans more towards men, or at least so far has leaned more towards men, with the only person that she's really depicted as having even the most mild interest in would be B, aka Beelzebub, who she literally says, like, I think like the first thing she even says in regards to B after Vortex introduces her is she's hot. That's it. That's and a lot of people took that to mean, oh well, she's a lot of people took that to mean, well, oh, she's secretly lesbian because she's suddenly saying that B is hot. That must mean that she's not even into guys. No, she's bisexual. And again, this is another trope that I really hate. The idea of a bisexual person really just being gay, but in denial. That's another trope that I really hate. And it may surprise you to know this is a straight guy saying this, but I mean, again, this is one of those things where I can relate to these people even though most of them aren't straight, but at the same time, we don't have a lot of positive straight rep. When, again, you figure that the only two members of each cast that we know are supposedly straight have only two beats. They're straight and they're murder hobos. This is why I'm very, very worried about what could happen if they introduce Leviathan Von Eldritch into Hazbin Hotel. We've already seen it with Chaz in Helluva Boss, because I think they were trying to use that to justify why Moxie and Millie are together. No, you don't need to do that. Just like you don't need to justify Charlie and Vaggie being a couple. They're a couple because they work as a couple. Now, to be fair, they're written to work as couples. Moxie and Millie are written to be meant for each other. Charlie and Vaggie are written to be in a healthy relationship, even if Charlie's got a little bit more of her head in the clouds and Vaggie's a bit more grounded. In that case, they have a couple of alternating personality, components that mesh well together. Same with Moxie and Millie. Moxie is a little bit more neurotic. He's, a little bit more uptight. Millie's happy-go-lucky, But again, she's also a murder hobo. Which also kind of works out for Moxie because apparently that might be his fetish. Among others. Because apparently they have a couple of different fetishes they seem to enjoy. But that's beside the point. Do I believe that these shows have straight representation? Honestly, if you hadn't told me that Luna was bi, I would have said that she and Millie would have been the straight rep in Helluva Boss, and that honestly Luna would have been the single best representation of it, because I mean, honestly, she's kind of a goth edgelord, or at least she acts like it most of the time, but she's not a kill-happy psychopath, which Millie is depicted as taking great pleasure, in their work. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, taking pride in your work is one thing, but she apparently loves to kill people. And I think to some level, so does Moxie, because even though he wants to be more discerning about the clientele they take and the targets, they're willing to kill, if you listen to the song that he sings in the Helluva Boss pilot, he's every bit as much into killing as Millie is. He's just a little less upfront about it, And again, seems to be more interested in watching her kill people because apparently it turns him on, which is, again, probably a result of his upbringing because he was raised in a mob family and, again, he's a bag of trauma. I mean, at this point, literally, I don't think any person in Helluva Boss is particularly good straight rep. I mean, even Crimson has more depth of character to him than Millie does, but he's not a main cast member. He's occasionally popped up. He's had 2 episodes where he's been a major point of the plot, and I think we'll see him again in season 3. But if you had told me that Crimson was Moxie's brother and was asexual, I could have believed it. Just because, I mean, if they hadn't told us he was Moxie's father and that he was an abusive asshole, I mean, you wouldn't have known. I mean, you would have known he was in the mob, so, I mean, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand with, you know, being willing to kill people, but that's a whole other animal. So, yeah, I don't really see any character in Helluva Boss as being good straight representation. Millie, if you didn't know that she was dating Moxie, I mean, if they didn't show her dating anybody at all, her only real character note would be she's a murder hobo. She loves to kill people. That's it. But the fact that she's a murder hobo and apparently the only straight member of the regular cast, again, it's not good representation. To be fair, I don't really think that any of these guys are good representation for mental health, other than Millie. Because I'm sorry, I don't buy the idea that she had all these insecurities that she talks about in Unhappy Campers. I mean, the one time that I even halfway believe it is in the episode Ghost Fuckers. Now, and even then, I don't entirely buy it because she seems to be a very perky and happy individual. And honestly, I will say this, considering how well she gets along with Blitz, my first question would have been, how is it she didn't end up with Blitz? Because those two feel like, if you had taken Stolas out of the equation and told me those two had gotten married, I would have bought it. Because honestly, more than anybody else in the show, yes, she lets him, you know, kind of be himself, but at the same time, she's also been able to ground him a little bit. You know, and he listens to her. He takes her advice and her critiques to heart, which is something he doesn't really do that much with Moxie. So, again, if it weren't for the fact that he and Stolas are the obvious romantic endgame for the show, I mean, you could have put Blitz and Millie together, and it would have worked. You legitimately could have put them together, taken Stolas out of the equation as a romantic interest, and it would have been just as believable. Because those two, again, you can see them being best friends, which, again, Millie says that that's what she sees Blitz as, her best friend. I could easily have seen them be more if you took Stolas out of the equation and had the attraction be between him and Millie rather than Millie and Moxie. Because they do work together very well. Blitz, at the very least, has never been depicted as dating somebody of the opposite sex because of a bad relationship with somebody of the same sex, nor have they shown him being somebody who's dated the same sex because of a bad relationship with the opposite sex. In fact, if anything, he seems to be the one who self-sabotages his own relationships because he believes he doesn't deserve to be loved. Now, this is something that, oh God, what's his name? Sarcastic Chorus, I think has brought up before, and I'm really sad that he's not doing any more Helluva Boss videos, because out of all the stuff that he's done, those are legitimately my favorite videos, but that's because I actually watch Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss, and I don't really watch any of the other shows that he covers. But I do not want to see them try to use any individual as justification for why somebody in the current cast is dating somebody of either the opposite or same sex. And again, with Leviathan, I can so easily see this happening that if it does happen, it will make it legitimately the single worst episode of Hazbin Hotel. Hand to God. I pray that they don't do this. I want to see Leviathan and Charlie be individuals who they dated for a while, realized that either there was no spark or they wanted different things out of life. They decided they would be better off as friends and are actually friends. I want to see that. I don't want to see the stereotype. I don't want to see the trope of the horrible boyfriend who was so bad that the person that they're dating now looks better by comparison. And again, people are going to say, well, wait a minute, how could that possibly be? We've been introduced to Vaggie and Millie from the beginning of the show, of each series. Yes, but the problem is, any time that is done in any TV series, particularly comedies, because this even happened with Cheers, where, Frasier Crane, the psychologist from Cheers, had an old flame come back into, I think that the show was set in Boston, was such a clingy pain in the ass that eventually Frasier had to break it off. Now, he didn't end up dating somebody of the opposite sex, but he did end up marrying the woman that we know to have become his wife, and then later his ex-wife, Lilith. I think it's Lilith. Somebody remind me what her name was. I think it's Lilith, which is kind of ironic considering the shows that I'm talking about are set in hell, and Lilith is supposed to be the first wife of the devil. Anyway, the one thing that I will say is the whole idea of this person was so bad that the person you're either dating or married to now seems better by comparison. That's a horrible trope. It's disgusting. It's got to stop. And unfortunately, this happens so often in media. Now, more recently, we've seen it be that an individual is such a bad romantic partner that they go date somebody of the opposite sex. And again, I don't like that trope either. I don't like either version of the trope. I don't want to see Leviathan be this clingy, whiny simp. I don't want to see him be this complete asshole. I want to see him be somebody that Charlie still has a good relationship with, and that they are fine being friends because they realize that they're better as friends than they ever were as romantic partners, and that they have a good friendship. I want to see that. I don't want to see the typical, toxic male bullshit. I don't want to see the whiny, clingy simp. I want to see Leviathan show up, and even if he doesn't support the idea of the hotel, I do want to see him still be friends with Charlie, and maybe even have Charlie bring him around to the idea. I'd love to see that. I would love to see that because it would be a healthy thing to see in the series. And if Leviathan is straight, as I suspect he is supposed to end up being, this would make him the first truly positive representation of a straight person in the show who isn't either a bag full of trauma, suffering from or recovering from depression, or just kind of primarily just shitting on Charlie's dream up until, she brings him around. And of course, yes, I'm talking about Lucifer. And again, I don't know if Lucifer is straight or bi. I mean, at this point, we know he's apparently had a relationship with Lilith, and he's kind of hinted that he might have had an affair with Eve, whether or not that was part of their plan to give humans free will, which I will admit is kind of odd then, because it's like, Lilith kind of already seemed to have that, but let's just, that's a video for another time. But long story short, again, this trope, this cliche needs to stop, and I really pray to God that not only do we get some good straight rep in the show with characters who have beats beyond just being straight, as long as that beat isn't just being a murder hobo. I mean, I would love to see a legitimately decent straight person who isn't either completely, dealing with absurd levels of trauma or just happens to be kill happy. Let Leviathan just be somebody that had an amicable breakup with Charlie, and that she and Charlie still happen to be on good terms. They're friends. They're willing to be supportive of each other. Just don't, for the love of God, please don't go with this idiotic trope. We got season 2 at some point of Hazbin Hotel coming up, and I hate to say it, but I fully believe we're going to see Leviathan in the second season, and I believe we're going to see him be either a dick, a simp, or both. And they're going to try to make it out so that he was so bad that anybody that Charlie dated after him was going to look better by comparison. Again, it feels like they're going to try to do this to justify the fact that she's dating Vaggie. And again, this is the trope. This is the point that I said, yes, Vaggie has been there since the beginning of Hazbin Hotel. Yes, Millie has been there since the beginning of Helluva Boss. Yes, these two are in relationships with established characters in the show. Vaggie's dating Charlie. Millie is married to Moxie. But again, when we see something like that, when we see an individual who is from the past of a member of the show, and they are such a complete dick, or a simp, or both, it's done to make their current romantic partner look better by comparison, to justify why the character is with the romantic partner they're with now. That doesn't need to be done. Vaggie and Charlie they're fucking adorable together. They have aspects of their personalities that complement each other, that work well off of one another, and they don't need to justify it beyond just they met, they eventually either had an instant connection, or they eventually found a romantic connection, and they're together now. That's all you need. So I'm sorry, it's just, this drives me up the wall because I can see this happening. I can see this happening with Hazbin Hotel. We've already seen it in Helluva Boss. We've seen it in stuff like Cheers or The Simpsons, or you name just about any, and I mean any, comedy, and even some dramas. It's just something we don't need to see more of. We don't need to see this again and again and again and again. Please, for the love of God, let this be a case where Leviathan and Charlie had a mutual breakup. They're still friends. Maybe Leviathan doesn't believe in redemption, but he's still Charlie's friend and is willing to support her, even if he doesn't buy into the idea of redemption. Because they don't know, as far as I know at any rate, they don't know that Pentious is in heaven yet. I don't think they've been told. Either way, I don't want to see this stereotype, this cliche, this trope used when and if we get Leviathan von Eldritch. I don't want to see it with Helga either. Again, Helga, Helsa, whatever the hell her name is. I don't want to see the whole rich bitch queen bee of the school thing. I don't want to see either of those tropes. They've been done to death. I want to see, maybe Charlie and Helga don't get along. That's fine. But she doesn't have to be this antagonistic individual. Maybe they just don't get along because maybe Helsa doesn't like the fact that she thought Charlie and Leviathan were good together and they broke up, and she thinks it's Charlie's fault. I mean, that'd be interesting. It'd be better than the whole idea of, Leviathan was such a colossal dick. You know, because the way you're gonna see it, if we see this at all from Helga / Helsa, is she's going to ignore any negative traits that Leviathan had in the relationship if he's depicted as either a dick or a simp, and she's going to put all the blame on Charlie. Because Charlie is too good for Leviathan. Now, to be fair, Charlie's as close to a saint as you're going to get in the show. But I don't want to see that be why they broke up. I don't want to see that. And the problem is, I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do that, and then they're going to have it be, that either he shows up in flashback or he shows up in the modern day, and he's depicted as either a simp or a dick. And they're going to use that as a way to make Vaggie look better by comparison. She doesn't need to look better by comparison. She's with Charlie now because Charlie chose her due to the fact that they ended up together. I don't think they started dating right out of the gate. I think they initially said that it took a while for Vaggie to get up the courage to approach Charlie in the romantic sense, but they went from there. Either way, I don't want to see this. And I really hope none of you do either. So I've kind of sat here rambling for, oh my God, has it been an hour already? Jeez, I guess when you have a lot to say, you can really just go nuts with this. All right, folks, this is going to be where I wrap this up. Again, like I said, please write into YouTube, ask them to stop fighting ad blockers. I know there are people out there who don't mind ads, but all it takes is one ad infected with malicious code, whether or not anybody knows it, to do damage to your computer, whether that be a virus, malware, whatever. Write into YouTube. You can find their address. I mean, hell, Microsoft Copilot can tell you their address. You can look it right up online if you need to. Write in and tell them, stop fighting ad blockers. People who do use ad blockers are in the minority. Clearly, they're not, impacting YouTube's revenue. Either that or they need to lower the price on YouTube Premium. When they cost more than Netflix and they tell you, even if you buy YouTube Premium, you're still going to see ads, that defeats the point of saying, well, if you get YouTube Premium, you won't see ads. Anyway, if you happen to like this video, please ring the notification bell, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I will try to respond if I can, or if there's anything that I can really respond to at all. I can't believe I spent an hour talking about this, but I guess a lot of it was me somewhat repeating myself, but I felt like this was something that needed to be said. I typically do not use YouTube anymore as a YouTuber, but every now and then I will still do videos. Again, for those of you who stuck around this long, I appreciate you for having stayed subscribed. more power to you. I'm going to try to start listing. I got to figure out how to do it, but I'm going to start listing my Throne account on here. If you guys want to, look into that once I figure out how to do it. By all means, I don't really expect much at that point. Hell, I'm thinking of getting rid of it at this stage because there's nothing I can do with it. But yeah, I mean, if you want to, leave a comment, that'd be great. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. Should Leviathan be depicted as your stereotypical dick or simp or whatever? Do you want to see him look like an asshole just so Vaggie can look better by comparison? Does she need that? Does Millie need to have had Chaz show up in the series and have dated literally both of them just to make, Millie look better by comparison to Moxie and vice versa by comparison to Chaz? It's like, I don't know. And do you want to see better straight representation in the show? Because again, so far, all we've got, and literally if you hadn't told us that Millie was married to Mox, or that she was even dating anybody, literally her only character note would be murder hobo up until Unhappy Campers, and then that completely conflicts with what we saw in the first season. And there was never any indication that she ever had any kind of severe insecurities or anything like that. And then of course Nifty is, if you've seen Hazbin Hotel, you know how bad off Nifty is as a character. She's just obsessed with guys, specifically quote-unquote bad boys, and, again, she's a murder hobo to the point that literally very few people in the main cast are willing to be physically near her if they don't have to, except in certain circumstances where the plot demands it. She's a lethal joke character, but she's still a bad joke character because her whole note is obsessed with men and killing roaches. She's a murder hobo, period. So again, what do you guys think? Leave a comment below. Hit like, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell if you like this video, and I will catch you later. Peace.